Time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Do want to thank R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend, Warsaw, and Fort Wayne. You can go to rbcarcompany.com. Let them know I sent you. All right, so I want to start with just a couple of local stories. Obviously, these are huge stories, particularly in Indiana. But there's also an election update, local election update in Elkhart County. What, you thought we were going to get through this thing without a controversy in the state of Indiana? No, can't have that. So today, the case has officially ended in the Delphi murder case. And so what we have now is we've got this thing in the hands of the jurors. And everybody in Indiana, I think, knows about this. Most people in surrounding states know about this. For those of you who are, across the world or across the country, it's a horrific case involving the death of two young ladies and two girls. And Richard Allen is the suspect here. And the prosecution and the defense delivered their closing arguments today. I think they each had a maximum of 2.5 hours. And at 1:25 p.m., the case went to the jury. And so we're just sitting here waiting. All right. Jurors will have to decide if Allen, charged with 4 counts of murder in the February 2017 deaths of Abby Williams and Libby German, is guilty or not guilty. It's also possible the case could end in a mistrial if the jury cannot agree on a unanimous verdict. I don't anticipate that. Do you anticipate that? I expect a unanimous verdict on this one. Indiana State Police arrested Allen in October of 2022. And when the arrest happened, it just, wildfire just spread throughout the news media here. And I remember, cracking the microphone and going, holy smokes, it has been 5 years since this happened. Because it felt like it was, just a month or two ago. So 5 years after the tragic death of these two girls, they arrested Allen. And then the state said that an unspent bullet found at the crime scene matched a gun that is owned by Allen. Now, when he was in custody, he later confessed to killing the girls, according to the prosecution. Now, the defense, they worked on casting doubt on that confession and claiming that the investigation wasn't competent, that, evidence wasn't handled properly. They also contended that Allen's confessions were false. And as the result of months spent in solitary confinement, he was at the Westville Correctional Facility. The defense also questioned the bullet evidence and the entire timeline that the state had for the case. Now, we were sitting here just doing little updates. Seemed like they were, delaying. And it was just normal, legal stuff. And then all of a sudden, the defense team comes out and says, hey, we know who killed the girls and it's not him. And we're like, wait a minute, what? And then he blamed the Viking ritual people. I forget the name of the faith.
The Odinism.
Odinism, that's it. So he blamed Odinism, and which automatically, for some reason, it took off like wildfire. But, if you're just looking at this from an objective point, and I don't know, maybe I've just covered enough of these things. I looked at it and I was like, okay, but he has a lot of details that he wouldn't have in accusing Odinists, of committing the murders. He wouldn't have those details unless, of course, he were involved. It just didn't make any sense. At least to me, from what we heard publicly, we could be missing context and that sort of thing. I actually had an Odinist reach out and say, our faith does not do any of this stuff that he's claiming. It's nonsense. So again, the whole year has just been very bizarre for everything. It's not just politics. So they actually argued that defense. The prosecution made their case against it. It started in Allen County. So for those of you in the Fort Wayne audience, that was October 14th. So it took all of this time. He was arrested in October of 2022. It took all of this time, and then they finally started jury selection on October 14th. And here we are, November 7th, and the jury is now making that decision. So, it took forever to get to this point, but once it happened very, very quickly. So they had their closing arguments, that sort of stuff today. After both sides, this is Wayne TV, after both sides presented closing arguments, the court broke for lunch. Carroll County prosecutor Nick McClellan then had the chance for a final rebuttal. He spoke for just over 10 minutes. Now is the time that we hand the case over to you, he told the jury. I'm not up here to tell you how you should feel. He reaffirmed that witnesses saw a bridge guy on the day of the murders, adding that witnesses on the bridge after the girl's abduction were irrelevant. He brought up Allen's confessions and the van detail that only the killer would know. He reiterated that Allen pointed a gun at the guns to execute power over them, at the girls, I guess is what, it's a typo, so. And reminded the jury that the state's expert testified that the unspent bullet found at the crime scene had been cycled through Allen's pistol. He also pointed out the defense's expert witness didn't do his own analysis of that bullet. Again, I'm just going to pretend that we have some firearm stupid people in the audience. I know that for most part, my audience is pretty smart on this stuff. The reason that having that bullet cycled through the gun is important is because of those marks that are unique on every firearm. Okay, it's not just a brand new bullet that came out of or a round, I should say, that came out of a box. There's actual markings directly linking to his firearm. While Abby and Libby were the victims, McClellan also described them as heroes. He pointed out that Libby shot the video that led investigators to Bridge Guy, while Abby hid the phone for police and concealed the bullet. And that's a detail that gets left out of this case a lot when the news media covers it. We have this haunting video of them on the bridge. And we have the phone, we have this round, and then just like we have nothing else. And it frequently kind of gets left out of the coverage. And it's not everybody's fault. I mean, there's other details that people are covering. It's one of those things that it happened in 2017, so it kind of gets lost. But the girls, they're young girls, and they were smart enough to be able to do this when they realized something was off. I wish they hadn't gone there to meet him. I wish that they were still here today and we hadn't had to cover this thing for the past 7 years, and that their families and loved ones hadn't gone through this. But when they realized that there was trouble, they knew exactly what to do. Libby told her grandmother, Becky, that she'd grow up to solve crimes, and that's what she did. McClellan told the jury as she brought Abby along with her. So you've got the judge giving his final instructions, or her final instructions. So they could extend into the weekend. We're not sure that it's actually going to be that difficult for the jury to come back. If it does go to the weekend, they'll work on Saturday. They will not deliberate on Sunday. I don't anticipate it taking that long. In fact, I would not be surprised if before the end of the show today, we were breaking news on you guys. I honestly, I really wouldn't. They had, mental health experts testify, all of that stuff. It's been, honestly, a lot happened in a very short period of time, considering this trial really just started, 3 weeks ago. But it took a lot to get here. So we're on the watch for that right now. So as soon as we get any details on that, folks, we'll be updating you on that. I honestly anticipate before the end of the show today. And if not before the end of the show today, I would assume tonight. I find it very difficult that we'll even wake up tomorrow and it'll be the first thing in the morning. I think that they want to go home. I think the jury has a pretty good sense of what's going on here. I didn't hear anything in the defense that would sway me away from it. I don't know how close anybody else paid attention to it. I know Morgan's done a lot of the news stories on it. We've had independent reporters sending us stuff, through our email and that sort of thing. I don't think they've heard anything. If you have, email me. Let me know. Seriously, I would be very, very curious. But from my perspective, this seems like the jury's going to probably come back fairly quickly. So they've only been at it for a couple of hours at this point in time. So we're watching it. We're expecting it to come back today. I don't know if it will, but you now have kind of the timeline of how it's going to go if it actually extends into the weekend. But I seriously doubt that that's going to happen. So Elkhart County, Indiana. Well, look at that. Son of a gun. Technical issues. Oh, that's weird. There's technical issues in Elkhart County on Election Day morning as well, in at least one location. And this one could overturn some elections. Nothing to do with Trump, but it could overturn some elections. So we're going to talk about that coming up. And yes, we will have some fun with the late night, I guess we still call them comedians, the late night hosts, and their collective meltdown and freak out over Donald Trump winning the presidency. And everybody just continuing to do all of the same things that caused Donald Trump to win to begin with. Got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth. All right. I got to talk about my home county here. I mean, it's not my home county. It's where I live now. But Elkhart County's a mess, man. And Elkhart County's red. It's just Elkhart City is blue. It goes back and forth, but right now it's blue. So Election Day is still not done in Elkhart County. And that's because Elkhart County election workers are still counting absentee votes. Like I said, it's not just the presidential elections that matter. It's all the stuff down ballot. Now, this is all happening because of a technical glitch on Election Day, which left absentee ballots uncounted. I don't know, maybe we should consider, and I know some of you have some strong feelings about this, but maybe we should consider starting to count those ballots the night before. I'm just saying. The Elkhart County clerk said that these votes could impact school board elections in the county. After the polls closed, around 32,000 absentee ballots were yet to be counted. So Chris Anderson, Elkhart County clerk, and by the way, can I just, have you ever interacted with a county clerk before, Morgan? Ever? Like for any reason?
Multiple times.
Okay. What is the typical response time that you get from a county clerk anywhere?
Very slow.
Very slow.
They were very quick on the phone with me the other day,
Dude.
which was kind of surprising. You were here for that one. I
Yeah.
was actually kind of shocked because usually they're like a little grumpy too.
They are
So she was
always
very
grouchy.
nice.
Okay, county clerks are always grouchy. They never respond. You usually have to badger and harass them. I swear to God, I've had one request of the Elkhart County clerk, Chris Anderson. He got back to me in 30 minutes. And it was a citizen thing. It wasn't a, I'm Casey Hendrickson from The Burning Truth. You know, can you answer my media request? It was a normal citizen thing. And this guy responded like that.
That's pretty quick for them.
Like, kudos for Chris Anderson. Okay. My one dealing with him was very swift and it was great. I got all of the information that I needed and it was very, very fast. But generally speaking, when you deal with a county clerk, and unfortunately, we have to do it way too much in this business, they are grouchy and they're very slow. And I hear that it's that way for all of you too. It's not just us. But Chris Anderson was very, very swift. So he said that there was a glitch in the machine that counts the ballots. It froze, which left county election officials without any way to actually count anything for those remaining 32,000 ballots. So a technician was called. They fixed the issue. But Anderson said that a majority of the staff had already gone home for the night, and so they intended to start up again on Wednesday, the day after the election. Election workers then returned Wednesday morning to count the ballots. So this is all because, we've got unofficial winners for the school board races. Well, a few of the races that could be impacted by this delay are in District 2, Concord School Board, and District B, and Middlebury School Board. You were not here on election night. I was sitting there. I looked at the Concord School Board race and I said, I don't know. This seems a little fishy to me. Now, call me a cynic, but we've watched the Concord School Board steal a victory from a woman before. It just happened. Stacey McDowell, I believe. And she won. And then they magically, the next day, took it away from her by saying that we screwed up on the ballots that we printed and we made a mistake. And therefore, you thought you won. We thought you won, but really you didn't win. Instead, it was this other guy who came in like fifth. And he's on the school board now. And thanks for playing. Bye. Now, of course, what does she run as? Oh, that's right. No porn in the classrooms. She's one of them. You know, those radical moms who just want kids to be protected and get a good education. How dare she? So I'm sitting there, I'm looking at this, and I'm like, I don't know. The Concord race looks a little weird to me. And sure enough, we're finding out that, in fact, these 32,000 ballots could completely change the Concord school board race. Oh, isn't that interesting? It happened again. And the last time, it was literally the government who screwed up. The government printed the ballots wrong and put the wrong names in the wrong slots. And instead of calling a redo, they just decided to guess how many of the votes should have actually gone to him and how many of the votes should have actually gone to her. And then they took the election victory away from her without ever providing any physical evidence at all that she lost that race. She challenged it. And eventually she just ran out of runway. Chris Anderson said that he's unsure if a recount will be needed, but said that every vote cast in Elkhart County is safe. I mean, that's his job as a clerk to say that, but it's not. We know it's not because we have at least a half a dozen ballots in one long-term care facility that I know of, because I broke the story, where people who do not have the mental faculties to be able to fill out any legal paperwork for themselves registered and voted, and every single one of them voted for Kamala Harris. And none of them even know who she is. So I don't think that every vote in Elkhart County is safe. With respect to Mr. Anderson, with respect. Although he did really get back to me very, very quickly. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, rumble.com/Casey the host. Do you want to laugh at some people with me? Because I do. You want to laugh? Morgan, you want to laugh at some people?
I do. I think we need that.
I played her a small snippet earlier, and she goes, "Is he crying?" Yes, he is. We'll talk all about that coming up. Again, rumble.com/Casey the host. You're listening to The Burning Truth.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Do you want to thank R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend, Warsaw, and Fort Wayne? Go to rbcarcompany.com. Once again, please let them know that I sent you. I'd appreciate that. Also, you can watch the live stream on Rumble. Go to rumble.com/Casey the host. All right, so let's take a look at the landslide. So it turns out that the final tally was, in fact, what I told you it was going to be on election night. That was my prediction. He was going to get 312. He got 312 electoral votes. He needed 270 to win, and she's going to get 226. And we also have a 4.6 million vote victory in the popular vote, which is irrelevant. We only talk about it because the Democrats are constantly making it a big deal. And even the abominable pumpkinhead, Rosie O'Donnell, is out there telling everybody that we need to get rid of the racist electoral college because that's what cost us the win. Except he won the popular vote. More on that stuff a little bit later. So we start taking a look at everything, and all of the swing states. He didn't win all the battleground states, but he won all of the swing states. Every single one of them. He won every one of them. That is just, I mean, that's a trouncing right there, folks. It really is. It's a trouncing. And I don't really know how else to say that. So he did great. Now, he won so good, so hugely, that he actually won this Michigan City, which very densely populated Arab American community. You might have heard of this place. It's called Dearborn. Did you ever think, I want you to, honestly, for those of you out there, you Republicans, you conservatives, even libertarians, even you Democrats, okay, just sit there. Did you ever think that Donald Trump would win Dearborn, Michigan? Dearborn, America's jihad capital. This is the guy that vaporized terrorist leaders with the Moab. Remember that? He vaporized them. And he won Dearborn. That's bonkers. Hey, guess what else has happened? Did you hear about this one? So Trump, he gets declared the winner. It was like inside of an hour, Hamas asked for a ceasefire. Donald Trump's foreign policy is already more successful than Joe Biden, Kamala Harris over the past 4 years. We'll get to Ukraine later, don't worry. But Hamas has basically issued a statement. Hey, ceasefire. And it happened right after Trump won. Now, I suppose if you're intellectually dishonest, you will sit there and say that that's a coinkydink and it's not at all related. And you would probably be one of these idiots who think that the Iranian hostage crisis didn't come to an end because Ronald Reagan won the election over Jimmy Carter too, right? No, it was just a coinkydink. No, it wasn't. They knew exactly what they were doing. Trump won Dearborn. Hey, guess who lost his own county in the presidential election, though? Oh, that's right. That's Tim Walz. Tim Walz lost his own county, his own home county. Didn't even vote for him. There's this really funny video floating around. I think it was CNN. The week before the election, they went to his hometown. And like, are you excited to vote for Tim Walz? No, I'm going to vote for Trump. They couldn't find anybody voting for Tim Walz anywhere. Oh, man. So whose fault is all of this, right? There's a lot of blame going around. There's an internal civil war that started brewing with the Democrats. And we tried telling everybody that, this was going to end pretty much the way that it was going to end for the Democrats, unless there was some kind of a steal or something like that. But it looks like everybody's just kind of decided that they're really, really going to train their anger and their rage at George Clooney. George Clooney's the guy. Because George Clooney was one of the people who pushed for Joe Biden to get out of the race. Okay, can we just back up for just timeout? Can we back up for just a second? If you're a Democrat, do you honestly think that Joe Biden was going to win this thing after what happened at that debate? And you could no longer lie to the American people that he was cognitively compromised? Because that's the reality of what happened here. For years, and we're talking like over 4 years now, the news media, Democrat politicians, their allies in the public, and of course Kamala Harris, all lied to you and said that there was nothing wrong with Joe Biden. And then Joe Biden, in spite of giving you the mountains of evidence that he gave you that he was clearly not mentally fit to serve, Joe Biden got on that debate stage and nobody could deny it any longer. It no longer was, oh, he has a stutter. Guess who had never had, hey, Morgan, guess who's never had a stutter in his political career? Joe Biden. Never had a stutter. He was always an idiot, but he used to be able to speak very, very well. So Joe Biden never had a stutter. Suddenly he has a stutter. Joe Biden never did that weird whisper thing. Suddenly he did the weird whisper thing. Joe Biden didn't have a history of trying to eat children's limbs. Joe Biden tried to do that a couple of days before the election again. Joe Biden has inappropriately touched women his entire career, so much so that he almost got knocked out by a Secret Service agent because he fondled the agent's wife when he was the vice president of the United States. True story. Joe Biden could no longer hide behind all of those fallacies and all of those lies that it was just a misspeaking, he takes things casual, what have you. He doesn't like to read the prompter like Trump. He just likes to go off script. None of that could hide after that debate. If Joe Biden stayed in this race, folks, I don't know that Democrats would have won anything outside of New York and California. I'm being a little facetious there, but, if we're being honest. And yeah, hey, guess who replaces Joe Biden if he dies, which is extremely likely in the next 4 years? Oh, that's right, Kamala Harris. It was still, as it was before Kamala was the nominee, it was still, this is really an election about Kamala Harris because Joe Biden probably isn't going to be able to fulfill the term. So the election was basically the same as it was. It doesn't matter how much the Hollywood people or the op-ed pages in the New York Times or whatever want to go after George Clooney. You know, George Clooney was genuinely trying to help the Democrats win. Why are you going after George Clooney and not Nancy Pelosi or Barack Obama? Because they're the ones who did it. George Clooney was just the face of the public, right? That's it. Why aren't they going after the, oh, that's right, sacred cows. I said cows, so I didn't call Pelosi a cow. Cows. That includes Barack. He's a cow too. So this is, it's just bizarre watching them do that, man. Crazy stuff. Okay, you ready? You ready? I'm going to play you one soundbite because I teased it, and I feel like I owe you just a little bit of a teaser before we get into the other sound bites. Jimmy Kimmel, who famously used his own child in a lie about Obamacare on his stage. Jimmy Kimmel had a little cry about what happened on election night.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate.
Do you think he was crying about his slave labor housemaid?
For justice, for free speech.
Has he impregnated her too? That's a thing that liberal men do in Hollywood.
For seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the troops. And
hold on a second. Did you notice that Ukraine got a louder applause than American children and women did? Did you catch that? Or Social Security recipients? I thought that was interesting.
Democracy and decency, and it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him, and guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
Oh, the tears of unfathomable sadness. Yummy, yummy, you guys. That's all, folks.
I love Cartman so much. I really do. It's not over. The Trump derangement syndrome meltdowns are continuing. We'll have some more fun stuff for you coming up on The Burning Truth. And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. Again, just bizarre. By the way, Republicans are they're going to have total control. The real question is, how many votes will they have in the House? Still got some races in the Senate, too close to call, but we're getting there. All right, so Jimmy Kimmel cried. Jimmy Kimmel, who again used his own child to lie to you about Obamacare and health insurance, went out there and he talked about Ukraine. He didn't mention Israel. And Netanyahu had a really nice letter that he wrote about Donald Trump after the election. And I was going to read it yesterday. I didn't. And so, but it's out there. If you want to go search for it, it's out. It's a very nice letter. So you have Vladimir Putin, who right before the election was saying, hey, you know, we need to basically normalize relations with the West and we want to have peace, right? Which I took as Putin probably thinks Trump's going to win this thing. So what did Vladimir Putin do today? We're talking like an hour ago. Putin praised Donald Trump and says he's ready to talk. Huh. But Jimmy Kimmel cried, Morgan. He cried about Ukraine, which got a louder applause than Americans. Got a louder applause than even the immigrants got. Interesting. Do you remember after the debate with Joe Biden and Donald Trump started surging, Joe Biden was collapsing and everybody's like, uh-oh, this is bad? Remember when I cracked the microphone the next day and I said, hey, something interesting happened in Ukraine. Both Zelensky and Putin said that they're willing to talk to each other and negotiate. Remember that? Because they saw it too. Then Kamala hopped in and suddenly those talks were off. So now we've got Putin out there saying, hey, I'm ready to talk. You've got Zelensky out there saying, hey, I'm ready to talk. Like the moment the election was called, Zelensky issued a press release and said, we're ready to talk. But he also defended like a victory plan and whatnot too. But you've got both of the leaders of this conflict who are out there saying, all right, we'll sit down and we'll have a discussion. We love you, Donald Trump. We'll have a discussion, okay? Hamas suing for peace right after the results come in. If you don't think that that's the Trump effect, if you honestly think that those are all just coincidences, you're not a very bright person. It is absolutely the Trump effect. Now, allow me, I'm not going to give you the details of it. I don't have the article in front of me. I'm just drawing from memory, okay? But this happened under Trump. Did you know that the United States and Russian troops actually got into a firefight and a battle with one another under Donald Trump? Did you know that? Which would be a really weird thing to do if you were controlled by Vladimir Putin, right? Do you know what happened to the Russians? They were actually a part of the Wagner Group, or the Wagner Group if you're European, okay? We slaughtered them. We did it on purpose. We knew who they were, didn't care. Do you think that maybe when Donald Trump had that little sit down with Vladimir Putin, and to steal a phrase that we have heard from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, when Donald Trump looked at Vladimir Putin and said, hey, on this Ukraine thing, probably leaned in a little bit like this. It's like, it's like, don't. Remember that? Remember that? Joe Biden said don't. Didn't work, right? Kamala Harris said don't. It didn't work. When Donald Trump said don't, it worked. Because Putin didn't do anything against Ukraine. Do you know the timeline of that? That allegedly took place after American troops obliterated an entire Wagner unit. Now, they're not just your run-of-the-mill Blackwater type private military. They are a government-supplied private military unit. So powerful, they nearly usurped Vladimir Putin from power as they marched on Moscow. Remember that? Putin killed the head of the Wagner Group. They could have overthrown the president of Russia if they truly put their minds to it. They're a very elite military unit to Russian standards. A lot of former Spetsnaz are in there. The people who run Wagner are former Spetsnaz. They train people that way. They have the latest, most sophisticated armaments that the Russian military has, including tanks, artillery, aircraft. They're not well-trained guys with small arms. And we knew that when we engaged them and killed damn near every one of them right before Donald Trump looked at Vladimir Putin and said, don't, on Ukraine. If you don't think that's rolling around in the back of Vladimir Putin's skull right now and forcing him to issue these public statements going, okay, we can talk, you're nuts. Got more coming up.
Podcasts by Federated Media.